Hello, my name is Emmett Russell. I am Director of Safety and Health for the International Union of Operating Engineers, and I'd like to give you a presentation on our runover backover section. Here's the first slide where it talks about what are runovers and backovers, and it talks about when a worker on foot might be struck by a vehicle. And we're talking about two different types of vehicle: motorists possibly coming through the work zone, and construction vehicles and equipment operating in the work zone. Now, here's a slide where we talk about runovers and backovers as a problem. We give some statistics on the fact that in a recent year, 63% of road worker deaths were due to runovers and backovers. And we give an overview of what causes runovers and backovers for workers in the work zone. And also we talk about vehicles traveling into the work zone. For this section, we have two different divisions in this section. We have a basic awareness program, and we also have an advanced program. I will first take you through the basic awareness program, and then I'll take you through some sections of the advanced program. Okay, the first slide talks about can we be safe near equipment and traffic, and it talks about workers being struck is one of the major dangers in road construction work. Here we give a couple examples of what workers on foot might be exposed to. Number one is remaining alert at all times. Number two is checking your surroundings, keeping a safe distance from the traffic, and staying behind protective barriers where possible, and also being able to look out and warn your coworkers. The next slide talks about the appropriate personal protective equipment. Here we have some demos. Wherever you see a number, that would be a demo. This demo gives a description of Class 1 PPE, which should not be used on road construction work. Here we have a description of Class 2 PPE, which is desirable. And here we have Class 3 PPE, where you should use this whenever possible, and specifically on night work, because Class 3 is the best protection you can provide workers. What about construction equipment? Here we give a number of examples on how workers can be safe with construction or around construction equipment. Here we have a demo talking about blind spots. In this demo, we show an example of a person standing behind a piece of equipment. And in this demo, we can actually carry the person close or farther away from the equipment. And when we carry the person to one side or another, we get a view of what the operator might see from the cab. And here, the operator sees that the person can be viewed in his mirrors at this location, but again, directly behind the equipment, the operator cannot see the person. This is a perfect example on how you can teach workers what the operator might be able to see from his cab, and also teach workers the desirable spots where they should stand around or behind equipment. This is an excellent example where workers can really get a true demonstration of what operators can see from their cab, from the cab of their equipment. Here we have another demo talking about the traffic control signs and setups. Here I'll give you a brief example on this demo. The challenge here is to take the folks that you might be introducing this program from and teach them or challenge them as to where signs might be located. In this case, we can attempt to plug a sign in here, and where the sign might stick, that is the right sign that you should put there. Where a sign might not stick, you know that that sign would be in the wrong location. Here you give examples of what might be happening on eastbound traffic and also westbound traffic. And here let me plug a sign into westbound traffic as well. Now, when you have spent enough time or when the exercise has been completed, you have the ability to show all of the signs on the westbound lanes as well as all of the signs on the eastbound lane. Excellent demo for letting workers and our supervisors know how a traffic control should be set up how can we be safe when placing temporary traffic control devices? Okay, workers should. And here we talk about clearly wear Class 3 vests to be easily seen, place, relocate, or remove temporary traffic control devices when traffic flow is light. When possible, work from platforms on vehicles. So again, we do a number of things here that will allow workers to understand how they can be safe when placing temporary traffic control devices. Now we've completed what we consider to be our basic program, and now I'd like to take you through some of the slides on our advanced program. Our advanced program starts off why so many runovers and backovers, mainly because roads are more congested. And here we have a couple of bullets that talks about or describes congestion. Here we also give a number of graphics that would explain or show you demos of what congestion actually means and what the bullets are trying to identify. On this slide, we ask the question, why are workers killed by motorists? And here we give examples of what causes injury or fatality as it relates to motorists. And for instance, a couple of the bullets might be motorists are unable to see workers, they're surprised by the work zone and the temporary traffic control setup. Motorists might be distracted or impaired. And they give a couple examples here. They might be looking at their cell phones or have other handheld devices. They might be drowsy, or they might be impaired by drugs or alcohol, or a given motorist might be speeding through the work zone. But this lets workers know what they have to watch out for as it relates to motorists coming through or around the work zone. The next question, why are workers killed by motorists again? Workers might stray into traffic spaces. And here we give a couple examples of what might happen with workers. Workers might be preoccupied, not appreciate or understand the risk that they may be exposing themselves to, or have no convenient access to work areas. In other words, in some cases, hazards are created by the way a work area might be set up in terms of location of restrooms, where a person might get their food and water, where they may take their breaks, and also the staging of company vehicles, and also where might you park your personal vehicles. So contractors have to be very diligent and careful in terms of when they're setting up a work zone that they don't create these hazards where the hazards do not need to exist. How do we prevent runovers and backovers by motorists? Here we say use proper temporary traffic control devices, setup and retrieval. Here we have a very good demo. And this demo gives us an example on how temporary traffic control devices should be set up from the curb lane out. And we also have a process on how those devices should be removed, and they should be removed from the outmost lane into the curb lane. But the demo gives workers an excellent example on how to set up. And here we have we talk about notify a supervisor if there's problems with the devices, and we also identify some of the problems that workers might encounter in terms of making sure the work zone remains safe. Okay, how do we prevent runovers and backovers? Again, we can here talk about workers should stay in protected areas. In these demos, we give examples of workers staying on the right side of protective barriers. Wherever possible, you should identify paths that workers should take to remain safe in and around the work zone. On this demo, we show an example here where workers should stay as far away as possible or practical from barriers. Here we talk about workers should be talking or doing other things in safe areas. Here we show an example on how workers should be getting in and out of their vehicles on the non-traffic side of the work zone, or where motorists might be coming through. You train or instruct workers to never get out of a vehicle on the traffic side. Here it talks about making sure workers always have an emergency escape route planned, because in some cases where needed, if a worker thinks about an emergency route, they might be able to protect themselves from injury or fatality if they were to have a motorist doing something completely crazy in the work zone. And here we have a graphic telling workers they should park their personal vehicles in a safe area, and hopefully from this graphic, contractors would actually take from this graphic that they should provide safe areas for workers to park. So again, their personal vehicles and also the location of their personal vehicles do not create a hazard in the work zone. Can an internal traffic control plan help? Here we have a internal traffic control plan booklet, and I'll show you a couple pages in this booklet. And this booklet is an excellent document where you can actually teach workers and or supervisors the importance of an internal traffic control plan, what an internal traffic control plan will do. And it is an excellent document in terms of providing you extra protection for workers and equipment inside the work zone. How can we be safe around equipment? Here is a slide that talks about safety for construction equipment. It talks about creating a barrier around equipment like cranes and or excavators that might have a space where it might be swinging, where the operator cannot see the backside of the equipment. Also, it gives a couple bullets on approaching or communicating with the operator before you approach a piece of equipment. And it gives some examples on the type of communication that might be practical and that works. One is communicate with the operator by radio using hand signals. Make sure you wait until the operator returns a signal and or recognizes you, and never assume that the operator sees you until you make eye contact. How do we avoid being crushed? Here we give a number of items that, if obeyed, would make sure that workers would not be crushed by equipment. For instance, the first bullet talks about lockout, tagout, and controlling hazardous energy. Second bullet, always secure equipment from unintentional movement. Third talks about avoiding pinch points. And the fourth bullet talks about clothing that might get caught in equipment and or jewelry that might create exposure to hazards and or hurting yourself. Here, this talks about blind spots. Blind spots is one of the areas where we feel as though it's very important that we educate workers on the blind spots of equipment. Here we have, NIOSH did quite a bit of research on blind spots of equipment. In this demo, we give some examples of equipment and the blind spots generated by that equipment. For instance, here is a truck. In the first slide, the gray areas are the areas at ground level that the given driver or operator might see. The yellow areas are the areas that the operator might see through his rear view mirror. But clearly, at ground level, where you see a gray area, these are areas where if a worker were to be doing something on the ground, the worker needs to understand that the given operator would clearly not have any way of seeing what they might be doing. The second slide is a slide showing what the operator can see at the height of an average barrel, construction safety barrel. And here you see the blind spot diagram has actually changed, and this change is based on what the operator can see as it relates to a given barrel. In the third slide, we give what the operator can see at the height of an average person, which might be about 5 feet. As a matter of fact, as a good toolbox talk or on-site demonstration, it would be good to actually have workers diagram the blind spots on a given piece of equipment in terms of putting an operator in the seat, having workers stand at different locations around the equipment. It would be an excellent exercise to show workers where the blind spot might be on equipment that's actually on their job, and giving them a clear understanding of what the operator sees and what the operator cannot see, and where they should be standing or not standing around a given piece of equipment. Here, we talk about the different devices that would actually help eliminate blind spots. And here we talk about cameras, sonar devices, radar devices, and/or tag systems. On this slide, we talk about why must we learn about temporary traffic control devices. We must understand use, spacing, and also maintaining this equipment. Here are a couple bullets that relate to barrels, cones, and tubular devices. And down here, we actually have a couple bullets or some advice on barriers, whether concrete, movable, or water-filled barriers. What is a spotter? One item that we should be paying attention to in work zones is better or more effective use of spotters. This slide gives us some of the advantages and disadvantages as it relates to spotters. Spotters warn operators about nearby workers and hazards. If you are a spotter, make sure the operator knows your position, workers know your responsibility, workers do not move behind equipment until you signal permission. Again, it's giving you the basic elements of what a spotter should do. Next bullet, spotters must be trained in safe procedures, including continuous visibility and contact with the operator. Now, a given contractor, if you were to provide proper training for spotters, that is an important way that you can eliminate hazards, reduce injury and fatalities in and around the work zone. What are the best general safety tips? Work zone is hazardous and requires you to be fully alert at all times. Here we give a number of safety tips. Check surroundings often, listen for warnings, and some of those warnings might be backup alarms or a given coworker letting you know that you might be in a hazardous area. Never work impaired by alcohol, drugs, medication, or any substance that makes you less alert. Make sure you get enough sleep and rest before starting your shift. And this is particularly important if you're working at night or working during odd hours. And look out for each other and warn co-workers where you can. Now, we have taken this run-over, back-over segment and divided it into audience-specific targets. For instance, here is an example targeted to operators and/or drivers. Here is a section targeted to contractor responsibilities. Here's another section targeted to agency owner responsibilities. And here is our basic awareness. So if you were to want to use this section or run over backovers in a more personalized way, you can actually come to this slide right up front and you can present the run over backover specifically for the audience that you might be presenting to. And again, you can see the versatility of the program in terms of having the program deal with whatever audience you might be trying to train or trying to make a presentation to. And with that, thank you.